Not been opened yet. All of us, all the journalists from all over the Gauteng province and even outside this province are still waiting here outside the entrance to the headquarters of the ANC. We are hearing that the members of the Disciplinary Committee of Appeals are right here inside the building. They're still finishing up some business, they're tying up some loose ends and so on before they could actually come in and deliver their judgments. But the stage is set, everything is ready inside. The chairs, the tables, the microphones, the podium, everything has been ready since this morning, and we're just waiting for them to come and deliver what is in fact a very much awaited decision of the Appeals Committee of the ANC. Vui.
Very much there to our correspondent Tammy Dixon. Well, here in the studio, I'm joined by political analyst Ralph Mateka, as well as Professor Shadrach Guto.
Thank you.
Who will be helping us to make sense of today's events. But before we engage with our analysts, let's take a look at this insert on where this matter started and the developments since then.
On the 30th of August 2011, the Johannesburg CBD was shut down. The ANC Youth League was at war with the ANC, the police, and the media. That's what you get for trying to discipline the Youth League.
Julius is like Jesus, was betrayed by another guy from KwaZulu-Natal, Judas.
Malema, uzofulega, ikhanda.
Next year we're going to Mangaung, so we don't know. Maybe we're being purged, our leaders are being purged because we've got a different line of march. Who knows?
We can't be subjected to this condition whilst journalists which are against the youth league and the movement in general are given space next to our offices.
The stuff newspaper headlines are made of. Every time ANC Youth League president opens his mouth, he grabs the entire country's attention.
When we're starting to march, we identified a group of lieutenants from PASO. And I went to them and spoke to them to say, if they continue with our march, we'll have a problem.
2003. The history is irrespective of the accounting or design.
You see, let me tell you, before you are chacharach, let me tell you, this is a building of a revolutionary party, and you know nothing about the revolution. So here you behave or else you jump.
Following its 24th National Congress, themed Economic Freedom in Our Lifetime, the ANC Youth League adopted radical policy.
We need to re-look into a new method of transferring the land. Expropriation of land without compensation. Because if you talk compensation, we don't have that money. The kids of Fairwood and children of Fairwood, they keep on inheriting the land, who must be remembered as a heroic generation that ushered in economic freedom after the ushering in of political freedom by the 1944 generation.
The ANC finally lost its patience with Malema when allegedly he tampered with neighboring Botswana's sovereignty.
Botswana, we have established, we agreed to establish a team by NEC members. They will decide who they rope in. We are going to facilitate the consolidation of opposition parties in Botswana. Because as things stand in Botswana, that puppet government is going to undermine the African agenda.
This was the final straw. The ANC finally charged Malema. But because he was speaking on behalf of the Youth League executive, they were also subsequently charged. The national executive of the ANC Youth League has been charged with allegedly bringing the party into disrepute, sowing division within the ranks of the party, prejudicing integrity or repute of the organization, fighting or behaving in a grossly disorderly or unruly way. The leaders of the Youth League were on their back foot and said they'd accept the processes of the ANC.
Yes, thanks, Comrade Floyd. From all corners of our country, and we want to call upon all those who are coming to Lituli House or anywhere else where they will be showing and demonstrating their support to this leadership, to do so with restraint and maximum discipline. No one has got a right to disrespect the organizational processes and the leadership in our name. We are calling upon is, at least for now, because responsible here as to, we'll do everything in our power to ensure that there is nobody who behaves in a disruptive manner. But this should not then suggest that we are busing people to the Lituli House. We have no such a resolution as the ANC Youth League.
As if they knew what lay ahead, the treasurer and the then president of the ANC Youth League got the hands of prayer laid upon them. But even that couldn't have prepared them for the events of the 30th of August.
Well, that was an insert that played a while ago on one of our sister programs, Cutting Edge. Well, as I said to you earlier, here in the studio I do have Ralph Mateja as well as Professor Shadrach Guto, who are going to help us throughout this broadcast to make sense of some of the things that have been done and said, and some of the things that will be said during the course of this broadcast. Let me start with you, Prof. Just going back, take us back that from a legal point of view. The issues, just remind us of the issues that were raised that brought us where we are today, some of which, it must be said, were in fact raised even by amateur people like myself about due process.
I think where we have come from in this disciplinary matter is basically that the leadership of the Youth League were charged and brought before the National Disciplinary Committee of the African National Congress. When it was done, 5 of them were found to have violated the ANC constitution, and indeed sentences were given, basically punishment, of which the leader of the Youth League got 5 years sentence to be suspended from the ANC. The others got lesser sentences. So the question really from a legal point of view is that they challenged both the finding that they had violated the ANC constitution. But
now I want us to fast forward and get to the day the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC announced the verdict.
Yeah, when?
Now, which you've just explained.
Yeah.
In other words, where were the holes in the way they went about making that announcement, or they went about arriving at that verdict?
When the National Disciplinary Committee pronounced the decision which they had made, immediately the accused persons who are now, a sentence was given, quickly indicated that the National Disciplinary Committee had denied them due process. Due process in the sense that procedurally they requested during the proceedings to be allowed to give mitigation. In other words, if they were to be found guilty, they wanted to explain the context and the reasons why what they were being charged of. For example, when they are being told that they are bringing the ANC into disrepute, it was referring partly to the question around the African agenda and what the leadership of the youth had said about the president of Botswana, that he was undermining the African agenda. But of course, there were other aspects which were considered to be division within the ANC, which related to the Youth League, indicating that South Africa was beginning to fall behind in terms of providing leadership in Africa. Of course, being refused just administrative action. That is, the Constitution is quite clear under Section 33 that if you are in a forum that is deciding on any matter and you are entitled to a lawful process, reasonableness, and procedural soundness, the denial of the right to be able to present your case to mitigate, whatever punishment or sentence. Constitution is quite clear under Section 33 that if you are in a forum that is deciding on any matter and you are entitled to a lawful process, reasonableness, and procedural soundness, the denial of the right to be able to present your case to mitigate, whatever punishment or sentence, was a fatal error that the disciplinary committee had made. Of course, we are waiting to hear what the appeal committee has,
we'll
is going
say
to
exactly
decide.
on that point. Ralph, let me bring you in here.
Yeah, the way I see it, there are two things. The first thing is the position that has been held by the Youth League that the entire disciplinary process is a way to silence them because of what you can say is the forthright policy positions that they have taken. And Prof has already alluded to some of them, including not really taking the African agenda seriously. South Africa seems to have reduced the footprint on the African agenda, according to the Youth League. And also, much more importantly as well, nationally, is a question of their position on the economy, the nationalization of mines. So for them, they've looked at the entire disciplinary process as a way to silence them so that they do not raise these issues. And they believe that these issues, I'm reading the position that they've taken. They believe that these issues is what the ANC seems to have forsaken. The mother body seems no longer to be engaging in such deep discourses. And I think the second point then that they are making is that even if they subject themselves to the disciplinary processes, they still feel that they have not been given sufficient leeway to make a presentation in mitigation of the sentence that they're going to be given. To me, that shows that they have an understanding that they might have erred and made mistakes in the way in which they've presented their views. And what they're trying to say is that you can find us guilty, but please allow us to make a representation so that you can understand that the context within which we have made these policy positions. And I think they're then saying that the decision by the National Disciplinary Hearing, the decision or the omission to give them a presentation is an indication that the entire process was only aimed at one thing, to find them guilty. And
that it cannot, therefore, arrive at the same verdict that it arrived at. I just want us to clarify that. Then we'll come back to what still needs to happen.
I think it is quite important if the Youth League or the accused ones succeed at the National Disciplinary Committee, succeed in the sense that it is found there was a serious error, take it back so that there's a re-hearing which would give opportunity for the accused persons to be able to present their case fully and so on. If it were to go back, there will be two serious concerns. One is, if it goes back, is the disciplinary committee going to engage in simple motions of to indicate that yes, we have given you, but we still continue to have the same sentence, and so, or mitigate it a bit? Instead of 5 years, they may say, well, 3 years, or those 5 years, they may say those are suspended. They may do that, but they shouldn't go just through motions. The second thing, which is very, very important here, and I think which will be raised, if at all it goes back, is the composition of members of that disciplinary committee who already had demonstrated that they did not want to tolerate or to give space for due process to take place. How can they be trusted this time around to be able to do that when they had been requested and they promised that they were going to give them opportunity, but they never did? This time around, if they go back, how do you trust members of that? So I think that the Youth League, the accused ones here, will raise that issue. We can't avoid it. And that in itself will mean that the ANC will have to say, do they reconstitute a new disciplinary committee and exclude some of the members who were there before because they have shown prejudice and contempt for proper procedures?
Okay. Professor Guto, Ralph Mateja, just wanted to hold your thoughts right there. We are going to go back to Luthuli House. Outside the headquarters of the ANC stands our political correspondent, Tommy Dixon. He is with one of the members of the communications unit of the ANC, Keith Khoza, who will hopefully explain what is going to happen next. Tommy?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Indeed, there has been a bit of a delay since we arrived here this morning. We were told that it's going to start at 11:30. That did not happen. Now we have a pleasure of having with me here one of the members of the communications team of the ANC, Keith Khoza, who's going to help us to understand as to where is the process right now. Keith, you were supposed to start at 11:30. That did not happen. Can you assist us to understand as to what caused the delay?
Well, the plan was that we start at 11:30, but the team that has been meeting for quite a long time made an assessment, and they figured out that they would need an hour more to round up what they were busy doing. So we are certain that we'll start at 12:30 with the team as soon as they get here.
The team, that is the appeals committee, that is?
Yeah, that's the NDC appeals committee, yes.
Has it arrived already here at the building?
Well, I haven't checked. I haven't been inside the building. I've been outside. But they had said by 12:30 they would certainly be here. So we're hoping that at 12:30 we'll be starting with the...
And what's going to be the procedure in terms of making the announcement? How is it going to be relayed?
Well, certainly I think the chairperson of the NDCA, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, will deliver the outcome of their work, and then from there we'll take questions from the media, and that will be it.
Right. Now, is there any chance that perhaps that will happen before the committee meets with the leadership of the ANC Youth League? What is the process with that? Do they meet with the leadership of the Youth League first, then the media, or how does it happen?
Well, they have to meet with the leadership of the ANC Youth League first, then they brief also the officials of the ANC, and then make the outcome public.
So by the time they come here, that would have happened already? That
would have happened, certainly.
Yes. Now, is there any indication that the leadership, we know that there's an NEC that is sitting right now in Pretoria, at least the top six of the ANC, is it going to be here to get that briefing? How is it going to work?
Well, it would certainly be a meeting. It does not have to take place here. It could be anywhere. It could be where the NEC is happening anywhere, as long as the decision is committed beforehand, before it is made public, yes.
Are you aware if that has happened already?
Well, if they say 12:30, the assumption is that they should have done that by now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, that's one of the members of the communications team at the ANC, Keith Khoza, talking to us, explaining to us really as to what is going to happen right now. We know that the journalists are now getting inside the headquarters of the ANC here at Luthuli House, preparing to start exactly at 12:30, as he says that by that time, clearly the ANC Youth League would have known exactly what is the verdict of the Appeals Committee, and also the top six of the ANC will have known by then as to whether this committee confirms the decision of the National Disciplinary Committee, or it takes it back to that committee for review in terms of the complaints that the ANC Youth League have raised, particularly the issue of mitigation that they say they were not given an opportunity to do. Well, let's take it back now to the studio to Vuyo.
Well, Tommy, before we allow you to go away and join your colleagues, just a quick one. What has been the speculation there? What have been the journalists saying from their sources or whoever would have spoken things to them?
Well, the popular view here, as we stand outside here at Luthuli House, is that Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of this committee, is going to take back this whole case to Derek Honeycomb's committee, which is the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC. That's the view outside here as journalists are talking about this issue, to say that there is an understanding that the issue of mitigation, which is quite central to the ANC Youth League's appeal, has really taken ground with the committee. And now there's a view that they are going to take back this case to that committee. I'm not sure if that's going to happen for sure, but I mean, this is the talk of journalists who are talking to various people inside and outside the ANC, that this matter will be taken back to that committee for review, so that you give the ANC Youth League an opportunity really to mitigate their sentences. But whether that will in fact alter the judgment and the sentence that has been passed out by that committee is something else, which we do not know how they're going to deal with it. For you?
Well, I did also, indeed see a couple of tweets in that regard, and a few Facebook postings. But is there another take? Is there an alternative take to that which you just spoke about now?
Well, another option, another view, in fact, is that, well, this committee is going to confirm the decision of the National Disciplinary Committee as chaired by Mr. Derek Honeycomb. They're going to confirm it as it is, in which case the Youth League, the suspension that was issued as a punishment towards the president of the Youth League will take effect immediately. He will then have to vacate his position as the president of the Youth League, and the suspensions will then kick off. But then there's also another view that says if that happens, the Youth League is ready, that this afternoon they're going to go to the National Executive Committee of the ANC, which is currently meeting in Pretoria. If that happens, that the judgment here is going to be presented, the chairperson of the Appeals Committee, Cyril Ramaphosa, indeed confirms the judgment against them, then they will have to go to the NEC to appeal it. That they have planned to do this afternoon. Now, that was before we got to know that the ANC Youth League leaders are meeting with the chairperson of the committee and his team, Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, we do not know now what is going to happen, whether the decision will be confirmed or it will be taken back. In which case, if it is taken back, I don't think there will be a need, therefore, to go to the NEC. But those are the views that are popular here among journalists as we are waiting for the outcome of this National Committee of Appeals of the ANC. For you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks there to Tommy Dixon, our political correspondent, who's just outside Luthuli House, where it's all happening, giving us, of course, a sense of what his colleagues, fellow journalists, are talking about. We've seen some of the tweets. We've also seen some of the Facebook postings that journalists who are outside and inside Luthuli House have been posting. Well, we are going to continue with our discussions. You are, of course, watching a special broadcast brought to you by SABC News. It's about the outcome of the appeal process that Julius Malema and his executive launched against the sentencing that was passed on to them. Let's take a look at this inset to give us a sense of where this matter started and the developments since then. Prepared, of course, by Tommy Dixon, who you just saw.
30-year-old firebrand Julius Malema, elected unopposed for a second term as Youth League president. But that runaway victory was short-lived. He had been ruffling feathers with his spirited comments. In 2010, he was found guilty of undermining President Zuma. He was warned that if he committed a similar offense within 2 years, he would be suspended. A year and a half later, he and his executive faced the wrath of the ruling party. In August, the ANC charged Malema and the entire Youth League executive for violating the party's constitution. The charges included bringing the party into disrepute for comments about regime change in Botswana and for sowing divisions within the organization.
We are going to facilitate the consolidation of opposition parties in Botswana, because as things stand in Botswana, that puppet government is going to undermine the African agenda.
Lutuli House, day one. Hundreds of youth leagues passed in, brought the city center to a standstill. Unruly supporters clashed with police. The subsequent hearings, however, were a complete paradox, calm and held at a string of venues. 3 months later, the protracted hearings were finally concluded. The verdict, guilty.
In respect of the present disciplinary hearing, the respondent's membership is suspended for a period of 5 years. This ruling is applicable to the respondent's membership of the ANC Youth League, and the respondent shall vacate his position as president of the ANC Youth League.
Malema and his executive went into a boss parade. They emerged saying an appeal would be launched. Their defense, the procedure was flawed and the outcomes were prejudged. Further, they were not given a chance to testify in mitigation of sentence.
If nationalization is a problem, leave the branches of the ANC to reject it. Don't suppress it. If expropriation of land without compensation is a problem, leave the membership of the ANC to resolve it. Don't suppress it by suspending leaders and suspending the ANC Youth League. The Youth League is banned. I'm not going to resign.
They also argued that the disciplinary committee members, including Chairman Derek Hanekom and Mineral Resources Minister Susan Shabangu, should have recused themselves. This was because they had previously publicly disagreed with the League's positions on land reform and nationalizations of mines. The League leaders also submitted that the DC's judgment and sanctions relied on outdated section of the League's constitution.
It will also depend on whether the ANC leadership itself remains united in accepting the verdict, or they begin to show some fragmentation where other leaders begin to disagree with the outcome. That in itself, again, will impose a political challenge to the ANC.
The appeals committee, chaired by former ANC secretary, began its hearing last Monday. Should Ramaphosa uphold the disciplinary committee's decision, Malema's 5-year suspension and the suspension of the other Youth League leaders will be effective immediately. But Malema would still have an option to petition the ANC's National Executive Committee. He can still raise the matter between conferences. This would mean that he can still make a case at the upcoming Mangaung Congress. Recently elected to ANC's Polokwane PEC, Malema will be a tangible presence at the conference. Tommy Dixon, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, that inset by Tommy Dixon giving us a bit of background to where this whole matter is coming from, where it all started. You are watching a live broadcast. We're coming to you from SABC studios here at Auckland Park, and of course outside Lutuli House we do have Tommy Dixon, our political correspondent, who is standing by to bring you what is happening out there. And inside Lutuli House at the foyer, you do have a whole group of journalists from all over the country who are waiting to hear the outcome of this appeal process by Julius Malema and the ANC Youth League. The chairperson, of course, of that appeals committee being none other than Cyril Ramaphosa, who is expected to walk into that room any time from now. But here in the studio, I am joined, as you saw earlier, by Ralph Mateja, as well as Professor Shadrack Guto, who are going to be here with us throughout this broadcast, talking about this whole issue. We do have also, inputs from people who've been writing, other people saying, let's pray Comrade Malema is saved. Other people saying, yeah, they must speed up his suspension. Juju must go. Thanks, Vuyo. Others saying, surely it's time to decide to kick him out. This is his political funeral. Rest in peace, Juju. Prof, your take? It's for the fun of it. Let's just speculate. Let's just speculate. What do you think is going to happen?
From those comments, I think that looking at what Malema is not as a person, but as a phenomenon within our body politic, I would say that those who are saying he must be hanged right now, he must go, and so on, I think they are rushing too much into harshness of, if we disagree with you, we get rid of you. But what you are saying does not go away. From where I sit as an academic and a public intellectual in society, let us go to some of the reasons. The whole question around Botswana. We have had ANC members, leading ones, some of them from the partner, COSATU from the Communist Party. What have they been saying about Zimbabwe, with whom we have our neighbor, we have good relations, government to government, party to party? Nothing was said. What about Swaziland? Nothing was said. And why then, when you mention, Swaziland rather, nothing was said. When you mention Botswana, then all of a sudden. So people will question, is this really a legitimate concern? And all they were saying is we will support the opposition. They are not saying we want to go and effect regime change by force. They are only saying they are supporting the Zimbabwe. So if you go to the merit, then we go to the local one, which is land expropriation. I do not personally think that we should go through a paradigm of expropriation without compensation, but a certain, the Constitution does allow expropriation, and it does indicate how compensation is to be computed. So expropriation itself is not something that we should consider so serious, and so forth. So I think that the land question is becoming serious. Just 2 weeks ago, I was invited by the Southern Africa Bishops' Conference, where they were launching their own vision for land reform in South Africa, because civil society is beginning to realize that if we don't address the land question properly, then we are putting our heads in the sand. Sooner or later, it will explode. And therefore, I do not think that those are too serious and so forth. So I do not agree that he should just be cast aside, but he belongs to a political party with certain norms and so on. But the way in which the ruling party is dealing with this matter, even on the Africa issue, Africa spoke just a few days ago to precisely say they now doubt whether South Africa is still maintaining its leadership based on the Africa agenda. These are the things Malema said. So I do not agree with the way in which he says them and so on. But this is a young person and so on. We shouldn't be scared of robust debate and so on.
Well, you see, Prof, I hear what you say, but I can also say that the same Julius, if he was as consistent as other people make him out to be, then we could be talking about leadership, about corruption and maladministration,
sure,
whether you condone or you are seen not to be doing much or saying much around those questions, because these are the sorts of issues that involve him, that that people criticize about him. The stories about the tenders, the stories about people who are supporting him living a lavish lifestyle and all those things. In other words, if he was as consistent and as caring and as actually, it is within his rights. Nobody's taking that away from him.
Sure.
It's within his rights for him to raise such issues. But if he was as consistent, then he would be addressing those issues as well. And those issues in particular speak to who he is.
Vuyo have not said he is not inconsistent. He is a contradiction. But corruption is a cancer that is growing seriously in South Africa. And I think it is undermining development. It is dangerous. It is very dangerous. It's a big cancer. But that corruption, one could say, is also involving people who are within the National Executive Council of the ANC. Who there will you say has not been linked to? Very few.
No, the only point I was making was that if he chooses to be as vocal about certain issues, then he needs to be consistent and just be as vocal about other matters that people are talking about today, one, but two, matters that involve him as a leader in his own right.
He's
but
not
I want
an
to
ideal
hold
leader.
that thought. Ralph, what is your take?
You know, it's becoming, having observed the entire process, it's becoming somehow difficult to separate the ideas that the Youth League under Julius's leadership stands for, and also his personal lifestyle as an individual, whether he's leading by example or not. And the way, for me,
there's two issues. There's two issues I'm raising. I'm saying there's the one of him putting issues firmly on the table, issues that he thinks or that young people think need to be put on the table. That's one set, right? And then there's other stuff that appeals to him, that talks to who he is, how he carries himself, the sort of things or reports that talk to the issues that have everything to do with him. The tenders, people who are prepping him up, who give him money to live a lavish lifestyle. In other words, this is the same argument you can make. Whether a minister goes to a hotel and pays $5,000 a night, right? And whether that, as much as it is allowed by the rule book or by the handbook that Parliament has, now whether that is legitimate or is legal or is neither here nor there, but whether in a country where so many people are suffering, where so many people are poor, you can afford as a minister to sleep in a hotel and pay 5,000 rands a night. And I'm saying, take that argument, put it and bring it to Julius's case. Should Julius be living the kind of lifestyle that he's living if he wants, on the other hand, he's still able or wants to present himself as a leader of the people and as a leader or as a person who looks after the interests of young people? What message are you sending when you're saying, I'm going to leave on tenders? That's all I'm asking. I'm just putting that on the table. In the same way that Prof was saying, he's putting those issues on the table, and legitimately so.
If you look at it, the question of let's look at the question of access to economy, young people, economic inclusivity that we have, the challenge that we have in South Africa. In a sense, if you look at Julius as a person, the lifestyle that he leads, you can arrive at the conclusion that he's actually distorting some of the plights of the poor, in a sense. He's distorting in a sense that he's raising legitimate issues that I think concern real people out there. There is majority of people who live next to mines and all, and they do not feel that they are benefiting out of living next to those resources and all. But then you have a politician, and I think an astute politician for that matter, who is living a different lifestyle, and he's using the space that exists within our society to raise those issues, to survive politically. And just to put it out there, is that the question that I can ask for South Africa is that it is quite sad in our nation that some of those fundamental issues about our society, the question of free speech, because today another concern as well is, can you really speak freely within the confines of political parties? The question of free speech, the question of economic inclusion, the question of the economic development, how it will benefit young people. It is sad that as a nation we have left that space open, that it can only be filled by politicians with ulterior motives. I think that is where the challenge is, because an individual that we are looking at today, the six that we are looking at today, their lifestyle might not be exemplary to some of those things that they're talking about. And that, I think, in the long run, it's going to be a problem when legitimate people or people with credibility come and raise those issues about their minds. People are going to say, but these are the issues that have been raised by those individuals. How then do we have to listen? How is it different now that they're being said by other people? So I think, just to put it out there, as a society, I ask myself, how did we create a space? Why were we so quiet about some of this debate that it came to be taken by young politicians who just want to survive politically?
Prof, how did we get to this point? How did we get to a point where people with own agendas or who are in themselves contradictions get to tell us what to do, what to think, and how to go about doing our business? What happened to people who can, who have a cleaner, if you like?
South Africa is at a stage where there's need for new type of leadership in the society, questions of governance. And I believe that Julius Malema and the lifestyle and how he has used the tender process and so on. The other day, since we make it light discussion a bit here, somebody said that he had one of the leaders of the I think the communist youth saying that in some part of this country, young babies, children, when they begin to talk, there are words which children, they start, Papa, Mama, and they are saying that in that part of this country now, babies, when they begin to talk, they say, Papa, Mama, tender. In other words, the corruption and where state or government, in terms of any service they give, whether it is housing, construction of roads, whether construction of schools, whether it is supply of resources to the prisons, whatever it is doing, it is given on the basis of somebody being politically connected, so that if there is something about going to be given next week, you form a company which has never done any work in that area, and you are the one going to win the tender. When the work is done, it is terrible quality, not just that you have gained the money, but the service which is being provided is rotten. It is underdevelopment. It is really undermining society. So yes, you are right that Julius Malema is trapped within that. In a capitalist country like South Africa, and opportunity which freedom has created, there is a rush for, if you like, class formation, and therefore people try to climb the ladder, because a capitalist society by its very nature is people are divided into classes by the economic power that they have, and in that rush they bend the rules, they do, and that is the point where leadership becomes very, very critical. Yes, I agree that he doesn't belong to the class of people who are looking at all these challenges in a global sense and dealing with them. He chooses those areas which do not touch on the mafuta or the honey that he is eating and so on. So I think that it is very, very important for us as a nation to begin to say we need to address this way of plunder of resources within the state, which then creates underdevelopment rather than development. You are right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you are watching a live special broadcast coming to you from SABC studios here in Auckland Park. But outside Luthuli House, the headquarters of the ANC, we do have Tammy Dixon, who is standing by to give us a sense of what is happening there, where Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the chairperson of the appeals committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, is expected to walk in any time from now and, of course, deliver the outcome of Julius Malema and his executive's appeal to the sentencing that was handed down to them by Derek Hanekom and the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC back in November. Tammy, what's happening there outside Luthuli House right now?
Well, Vuyo, we're still waiting. What has happened since we spoke is that all the media contingent that was waiting outside these headquarters of the ruling party are now seated inside the building. They are now waiting for the committee members of the appeals of the ANC to walk in to deliver their verdict. Now, outside here, it's very quiet, Vuyo. It's very calm. There are no protests. I've seen just one protester in the name of Miles Budu. We know that he always carries all those colorful banners and protest all by himself. Other than that, it's quiet outside Luthuli House. But this is what we have been told now with regards to the waiting that is happening here, is that the leadership, or rather the members of the appeals committee, are now on their way from Pretoria. You do know that before this press conference can actually take place, two things need to happen. The committee has to inform the top 6 of the African National Congress with regard to their verdict and so on. That process has happened in Pretoria, where the National Executive Committee is currently meeting until Monday. So they went there to inform them about their verdict. After that, they have to inform the leadership of the Youth League. Now, the ANC Youth League members are now inside this building here at Luthuli House, waiting for the Cyril Ramaphosa and his team members to inform them as well in terms of what their verdict is. And then after that, they will then address the press conference. That is very, very important. It's a process that they need to follow before they can make their announcement public. So that tells you, Vuyo, that we probably still have some few minutes to wait outside here at Luthuli House as they try to fulfill all those obligations before that verdict can be made public. But we're still waiting here. We do not know when exactly will that happen. But like I said, I mean, the members of the media, all the cameras outside Gauteng and from other international media houses are here waiting for this very, very important decision that is going to be made here at Luthuli House this afternoon. Back to you, Vuyo.
Tommy, just before I allow you to go, I mean, looking at some of the Facebook postings, two issues that some of the people are asking. Do we have any Julius Malema supporters hanging around there? You did talk about Miles Budu, but even if they are not perhaps standing where Golden Miles Budu is standing, maybe did we see some people, ANC Youth League people, walking into the building at any point? And then secondly, just the security around Luthuli House, how tight is it compared to what we saw previously?
Well, it's very tight, Vuyo. Security is very tight, but not to the extent of what we saw when the hearing started about 3 or 4 months ago. it's very much reduced, but police are here. I've seen some couple of nyalas here. I've seen some razor wires as well, but it's not really as tight as it was when we saw the Youth League appearing for the first time here. The pandemonium that we saw outside Luthuli House, it's nothing to that extent. But indeed, there are police even here at the entrance to Luthuli House. Nobody else is allowed to come in the building. It's only the media and the staff members. Nobody else is allowed. With regards to supporters of Julius Malema, no, we haven't seen any like large numbers of people, just curious people standing by watching as to what is happening. But you don't see people carrying placards and wearing T-shirts with Julius Malema or anything of that sort. It's kind of like very quiet out here, and I suppose people are waiting to hear as to what is it that the appeals committee is going to decide with regards to the issues that the Youth League have raised in terms of their complaints with the process, the fact that they were not given an opportunity to mitigate the sentence, and that the disciplinary committee has used an outdated version of the constitution of the Youth League, and many other issues that they have raised. But we're all waiting. Back to you, Vuyo.
Tammy Dixon coming to us live from outside Luthuli House, the headquarters of the ANC, where journalists are waiting to hear from Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ruling party, the African National Congress. And with me here in the studio is Ralph Mateka, who is a political analyst, as well as Professor Shedrack Guto, who is an academic and public intellectual. Professor, you were saying before we went back to Tammy that it is very much a free-for-all, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of things were allowed to happen. The question perhaps is, how do we, as a nation, having seen the pitfalls of not occupying public space where we should be, people like public intellectuals, academics, political activists, NGOs, everybody, how do we, beyond this point, ensure that if there are legitimate issues to be raised, properly positioned people take up those issues? We don't leave them to people who have vested interest. I'm not saying any black people, other people who don't raise, even public intellectuals for that matter, who raise issues are not themselves, sort of don't have vested interest. But how do we allow for a situation where legitimate, as a nation, legitimate issues are raised by people who have the interests of us all at heart, and not just their own personal or interests of certain groupings who have specific agendas to pursue, but raise these things in the national interest so that we build this young democracy of ours?
Building democracy is a journey. It doesn't have a destination. It is always evolving over time. And I think that the 17 years, we are going to 18 years, has demonstrated and brought out and shown us that freedom, a good constitution, and so on, does not necessarily translate into implementation, into behavior, and so on. We have good public institutions, but the role they play, partly because of the people who are put in to lead those institutions, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, have been chosen because of their political connectivity rather than their ability and experience in running those institutions. There are many exceptions. Let me give an example of the Chapter 9 institutions, the Office of the Public Protector. That office was not properly known until an able person, but also who did not go there because of just the party affiliation and so on, has been able to breathe life into it, and all of a sudden people realize we have a public protector who is doing her work very well, Advocate Thuli Madonsela and so on. I think that that's the kind of quality of people who are put in positions and who focus on implementing according to the Constitution and the law, and not what they hear from. So that is very critical. But you put a challenge. You are asking, what about we as intellectuals in society, academic? I view myself, I'm employed by UNISA. I was at WITS, I'm now at UNISA, employed by the university. The university is a public university. I don't see myself just as an employee of the university. I'm an employee of the people, because my salary, my resources, and so on come from the public. It doesn't come. Government gets it from the public, and so on. And then we get it. And so I see my responsibility as an intellectual doing what universities do, but go beyond that and connect with the society, the community, in a broader sense. For me, it is Africa and its role in and so forth. But I'm also connected with very concrete action. I chair the Rural Legal Trust, dealing with trying to address the position of people who dwell on farms, who many of them live the life similar to that of slavery period and so on. We need to address that, and we are really working hard to try and deal with that. I sit on the board of trustees of the Black Lawyers Association Legal Education Center. We are saying black lawyers are not yet positioned 18 years after liberation to play a significant role in providing legal services and justice even for government. And so even government rushes to the old institutions of lawyers that were already privileged. How do we build capacity of our lawyers, whoever they are, whether they're in the judiciary, whether they're in legal practice, whether they're in academia, whether they're in the private sector, and so on, or public sector? We need to do that. So it is important indeed for us, and through those, as we do it, because we are intellectuals, we also generate knowledge that we need to share, which point to solutions. Not just identifying problems, but looking at solutions
that are affecting us all.
Yeah.
Ralph, very quickly, just to finish this particular point, how do you think, especially young people who followers of Julius Malema, or who are being led by, or who draw their inspiration from people like Julius, what should be the role of young people in ensuring that they influence discourse, that the things that they care about, that matter to them, are actually put firmly on the table? Because some, in fact, among those who criticize Julius, are that, in fact, these are not necessarily the issues that the young people care about right now, as much as they are relevant. And in other words, he is not taking what are essentially young people's issues.
You know, Vuyo, the way I look at it, the problem, there is a root problem to this. I think it has to do with around 1994, when the ANC came into power. There seems to have been a belief that is the party that cannot make mistakes, is the party that cannot be captured by interest groups. And when I look at what's happening today within the ANC, the factions, the self-interest that the party is experiencing, those are normal problems that will be experienced by any other political party in a modern society. But what I think the role of young people should be, and how they should fit into the entire picture, is that young people need to start raising these issues outside political parties. You can be a member of a political party, but not all your interests can reside within the political party. And I think,
because a lot of them would tell you, the reality in South Africa is that it's difficult for other people to raise issues and be heard unless and until they belong or have an association with the ruling party.
But I think that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, that we all go into a ruling party and we think that we are all going to influence the ruling party from inside. Once we start having problems from the ruling party, there is no space from outside from which you can establish a relationship with civil society to be able to raise these issues. In my view, in my clear sense, I believe that the ANC is overburdened with some of the issues. You cannot expect the party to do all of these things. It will falter. That is why it is very important for young people to rally on a non-partisan basis outside political party and start raising some of these issues, and then take those issues and say to the ruling party or whichever party they desire that we are not going to be giving us your vote unless you give us a position on this and that. You cannot do that within a political party because we are bound by loyalty.
Ralph Mateko, Professor Shadrack Goto, you are watching a live broadcast coming to you from SABC studios here in Auckland Park. We are waiting for Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, at Luthuli House, who is expected to walk in any time and tell journalists what the outcome of Julius Malema and his executives' appeal is. We are still waiting. They still haven't arrived yet. Let's go back to some of the things that people have said which have brought us where we are today. Here are some clips from youngsters who spoke about their love or what they think of Julius Malema.
Comrades could have been fatigued or merely saving their energy for an eventful morning. But their resolve wouldn't be broken. They braved the elements of the night to show solitude with their leadership. Most of the night was taken up by struggle songs and dancing. And when the sun came up, Comrades' energy was more vigorous than ever, and their stance never more clear nor militant.
This is nothing else but a well-orchestrated disciplinary hearing which aims to silence the Youth League because we are going to Mangaung.
The Youth League are known to be kingmakers and are now backing one of their own for the ANC's elective conference in Mangaung 2012.
We are going to support Fikile Mbalula. We are not going to support Gwede Mantashe. That's not a secret. It's an open secret instead. We are not going to support Gwede Mantashe. We are going to support Fikile Mbalula. Whether Julius is suspended or is not suspended, it's a resolution. It can never be erased.
Those who underestimate the Youth League should be warned.
We are the foot soldiers of the ANC. We will defend this revolution. Nationalization, with or without Julius, is going to happen because it's a resolution of the conference, not that of Julius Malema.
And should they suspend Malema?
Even if Malema is suspended, no problem. We are not going to fight that decision. But instead, we are going to change the regime here in South Africa. And they must understand we must not be quoted out of context. If we are saying we are gunning for a regime change, we mean through a democratic process, through a ballot system. As it must also apply to that one of Botswana. We meant through a democratic process, ballot system.
Are you going to be supporting Zuma in Mangaung?
We don't think so, but we don't know. But
well, some of the views there of youngsters who in support of Julius Malema. Of course, those moments going way back to where this process started and the happenings in between. Well, a lot of you have been writing on Facebook pages, sending tweeters about this particular broadcast and what you think of some of the things that we've been saying here. We have Mpumelelo Masina who says, Vuyo, you and your guests seem to be digressing from the issues at hand. The key issues that President raises and is vocal about are not his issues. They are resolutions and policies of the Youth League. The fact of the matter is that a DC is being used to stifle political difference and dissent. The foundation of this process is political in nature. People remain in bed with white monopoly capital. Another view, Siabonga Tonga says, how do you mix two issues that don't mix? Appeal is about Botswana issue, not what you're raising. It's said that you never raised that with the president of the country that takes the decisions and who is a public servant. But we understand funded views, and we're not saying we don't see Malema's lavish lifestyle. Some of the comments that you've been posting, some of you have been posting on our Facebook pages. You are watching a live broadcast from SABC Studios here in Auckland Park. We are waiting for Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, who is supposed to come out there and tell the journalists who are waiting, who in turn will be telling the nation what that committee has decided about Julius Malema and his executives' appeal to them. Ralph Mateka, Professor Shadrack Guto are our guests. Let's go back to the issue. Obviously, we're still waiting for that verdict. What do you think will happen in the event what the disciplinary committee decided is upheld?
I don't think this will die immediately. I don't think Julius's political life...
You don't think what?
I don't think the entire furor over the influence and over the issues that are being raised will die with Malema, or if the 6 get suspended. Because I think what you need to be able to eliminate them altogether, if they uphold the decision, is to be able to have what you can call a mutiny within the ANC Youth League itself, where you have people who start to identify self-interest that could be harnessed if they push the 6 out. So until that emerges within the youth league, there is a possibility, I think, that even if you suspend them, they could still be called by some of the branches to come and give a speech and to come address some of the branches. And I think that that gives them a leeway to even agitate some of those positions. Those positions actually could even divide the party even further. I think they go beyond the political lives of those 6 who are facing these specific charges.
But how do we know? How do we know that the issues that Julius is raising are perhaps the glue, that holds the ANC Youth League together? Do we know that for sure?
We don't know that for sure, but I think the idea is that through those issues, he's being able to get sympathy. Not just within the youth league, even from the general public, you can say. I mean, we have listened to the views and we have read some of the posting that people are thinking that we are not talking about the real issues at the heart of this matter. We have reduced this thing to the technicalities of disciplinary hearings and all that. And I believe that there is a space for those things to be talked about. I mean, I've been following report that some of the mining companies, 1 or 2 mining companies, have proposed to build some of the houses for some of the communities. And when you look at the timing of the announcement of that, you could say that there is a clear indication there that in order to be able to run business as a mining company in a stable South Africa, you need to have some deep programs through which when people are looking at them, they will say that, there is an intention to try to benefit the people of South Africa out of the operations of the mines.
Prof, your thoughts? What you think will happen in the event this decision is upheld? And this decision is upheld?
There are probably 3 possible announcement that will be made today. One is that the appeals committee endorses and upholds the decision of the disciplinary committee in its totality. If that were to happen, I see the matter being appealed further to go to the National Executive Committee, and even after that it may actually go to drag on and be taken to the Congress. So it is not over yet, and if it goes to the National Executive Committee, one is not sure how it is going to be dealt with, because then the top leadership at the top sector they will be divided on the matter. And I think they will try to avoid it going there. And I think that would be, but if it were, there's still a process going on. That's one. Second one could be that the appeals committee may really try to find a middle, a decision that goes to the middle, where they may say we reduce the sentence, but it will be suspended. So all of them now get suspended sentences, but reduced. If that were to be made, it is a kind of trying to find a political solution to the matter so that it doesn't drag on, because it is one of those issues that has divided the ANC very seriously after the division of the ANC coming out of Polokwane. That has led to serious, weakening of the state, where people are afraid, even when they are working within the state, to talk to each other, even when they are all members of the ANC, frankly. So that's another solution which may come out. The other, I believe, is one where they say, let it go back, and we have already discussed that. Let us refer it back so that, the presentation, but as I've already said, or we discussed earlier on, that in itself will be very contentious, because the composition of the committee is likely to be challenged or put into question by the defense or by the side of those who are found guilty. So I think that out of those three, let us wait and see what will be decided, and then we can try to analyze what will happen.
Well, wait, and wait. Well, we have been waiting for more than an hour now for Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC. He hasn't as yet surfaced. Journalists, as you saw in the pictures that we were flighting about a minute or so ago, journalists are still waiting at Luthuli House, the headquarters of the ANC, waiting for Mr. Ramaphosa and his team to appear. But what we are also told, very reliably, is that outside Winnie Mandela's home in Soweto, there's a group of people waiting, including a significant number of journalists. That is where the ANC Youth League apparently will be going. As soon as they know what's going to happen, they will be heading towards Soweto, where Winnie Mandela is staying, to brief her about the outcome that Cyril Ramaphosa and his team will have handed down. So you can read between the lines what that means. We do not know. But for now, we are going to take a quick ad break. We'll be back right after this. So please don't go away. But before we take that short break, if I'm allowed, let me just ask the two of you very quickly, what do you think is happening here? What do you think is at play? I mean, already there's a lot of people who know that the Youth League will be going to Winnie Mandela's house. Yeah. There's a media contingent waiting for them to get there. From where I sit, things can only be pointing in one direction, but I'm not the one to speculate here. You are the clever one.
I don't know exactly what's happening, but all I can say is that they're trying to manage the situation. They're trying to manage the announcement. I think there are people who already know where this is going to go. And as you said, from what we have heard as well, that there seems to be an indication that they might refer that back to the NDC, particularly the mitigation, which means there might be further discussion about the sentencing, But I don't know exactly what's happening. I will put my head up.
I think it is something which is in the public knowledge, that Winnie really has expressed herself about the case to say, these are young people, let us mold them rather than simply try to silence and cast them away.
Is it just about?
And therefore, you know, they are going there. Should they, you know, not get justice, what they think is justice, they will still go there to get comfort, and what Winnie will say also will be understood within the leadership as a whole. And I think that is the strategy of going there. Should they win, or rather get a favorable decision coming out, they will go there to celebrate. And indeed, that is why you have not seen them surrounding Lutuli House in central Johannesburg. They decided that let us go to Soweto. But Soweto is also psychologically and culturally, in the imagination of the people, is a place of struggle. It is not the center of Johannesburg. And I think that that is, you know, a rather clever move by the youth league leaders to go there. But let us wait for the space and see what will happen.
Well, we will indeed see. You are watching a live broadcast, waiting for Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee, who is supposed to tell us what he and his team have arrived at, having considered the appeal of Julius Malema and his executive. Let's take a quick commercial break. Don't go away. We'll be back right after this.
If you know anything about fairy tales, you know that a hero doesn't appear until the world really needs one.
But he isn't cowering. He's looking right at us.
Don't worry. He'll learn to cower. They all do in time. It's an easy question.
Despero.
Yes?
You didn't cower.
Are you a man?
It's a carving knife.
Or are you a mouse?
I am a gentleman. It's beautiful.
It's dangerous.
Do you have any more?
The Tale of Despero, this Saturday on Home Theatre.
Next on Ghost Whisperer.
What are you doing?
Melinda's in trouble.
What do you want with him?
There's nowhere to run.
Him?
And nowhere to hide.
Just...
Stay away from him.
I know who you are. Matt Bonner.
No!
Matt.
Things come crashing down for Melinda on Ghost Whisperer, Saturdays on 2.
The call that many of us dread.
I want to report my daughter missing.
Ma'am, when was the last time you saw her?
Someone's trying to break into my house.
Shots fired at Connor Smith and civilians.
I just got mugged. They took my handbag.
Can you describe the suspect, ma'am?
The only force brave enough to respond. When Duty Calls, Mondays 6 p.m. on SABC2.
I think that is what I like most about being a star.
People come up to you, I mean, sometimes you'll be having a bad day, and you just meet someone and they just say, I love you.
You'd be like working in the street and you got your hat. It's very hot. You got your hat on, your sunglasses. They take them off. Why are you hiding?
I always say you have to be good to the camera people. We discovered a lot of interesting things about Cookie.
They know my side.
She's a bit of a nerd, which is not really what I am.
And my bad side.
I'm a very loud person, as you can see.
She's this big person, you know, she just goes for it.
Hey, are you from TV?
Hello?
Awkward.
The diva is here.
The style? Hell no, I don't dress like that.
Wish I had a husband.
She's very colorful, I must say.
Let's have a toast to 10 years of Stokvel.
Cheers, Stokvel.
Welcome back. You're watching a live broadcast coming to you from the SABC's Auckland Park studios. But outside Luthuli House, the headquarters of the ANC, we do have our political correspondent, Tammy Dixon, who is standing by, waiting, of course, for that big announcement that Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, is expected to make any time from now. We have been waiting for the past 80 or so minutes for that announcement to be made. As yet, there's still no word from the ANC as to when exactly Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and his team will walk in and make that announcement. We are live, and we're now going to cross to Tammy Dixon, who is outside Luthuli House, for the latest outside the headquarters of the ANC. Tammy?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. And what I can tell you right now, the wait continues. As you have correctly pointed out, started from 11:30, and then it changed. It was 12:30. Now we're hearing that it's going to be 1:30. Now, the little development that has come through right now is that the chairperson of the Appeals Committee of the Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, has now arrived. I can confirm that. We have seen him driving through the garage of this building here, Luthuli House. And our understanding now is that he's going to meet with the leaders of the ANC Youth League to give them the same opportunity that he has given to the top six of the ANC in terms of letting them know the decision of his committee with regards to this whole appeals that the Youth League have launched with him. So he's here, he's arrived, and now we are told by the officials here that in the next 15 minutes or so, he's going to come down and address the media here. But that will happen after he has spoken to the Youth League first. And until then, we will let you know as to what else is new has come true for you.
Right, Luthuli House in the CBD here in Johannesburg. And right here in the studio, I do have Ralph Mateka as well as Professor Shadrack Guto, who are our analysts. So the waiting continues. But back on the point we were discussing earlier about the significance of the Youth League going to her house as soon as they hear the outcome of their appeal. Are we suggesting that in some way Winnie Mandela provides a center?
What she does provide, because Winnie Mandela represents something in terms of the struggle against apartheid. She has been a leader, both occupying positions either in parliament or out of it. But she's an institution in the country, just as you have other leaders like Archbishop Tutu and people who are leaders in society, whether they occupy high offices or they don't, because that is what history made them. And I believe that she is also a person who can talk truth to power within the ANC. Since Polokwane, the debate within the ANC has really been very difficult, honest debate within the ANC. And very few people are able to say really what they stand for fear of being marginalized and being thrown away. So given that, I think that's probably, she is one of the few still standing within the overall leadership that can express themselves truthfully on what is going on. I think that is important and significant. Of course, one also she's not in opposition to, she's the type of leader that because there are camps within the ANC since Polokwane, serious camps and divisions. And she is not the type that simply belong to a camp. And I think that is also important.
Ralph?
Yeah.
See nodding.
You know, I think Winnie Mandela, she offers a moral support for them. And I believe that if you look at what's going on within the ANC, people who know the history of the ANC, she's one of the people that you could say she does not have vested interest or any direct vested interest. And the struggle for young people, her known radicalism in South African politics, the fact that she's known to just put it the way it's supposed to be without trying to couch things in complexities that the Youth League does not really believe in. And I think that brings that sense of alliance. But I think if they succeed in this bid, and then if they succeed in some of their other programs that are related or dependent on this, you cannot rule out the possibility that she might be rewarded.
You know, in terms of trouble, Winnie is a mother. And in terms of trouble, whether we like it or not, most human beings run to the comfort of the mother. And that is something that I think, which means the role of a mother in the psyche of the African and in our culture, in our tradition, and so on, is very important. Very important. Although we are matriarchal, many of us, but the center of power, who holds the family together, is not the man. It's usually the woman. And I think that, to me, it says a lot about our, identity as a people and what significance we give to just a mother.
If she does offer the ANC what the two of you are saying she offers, has she been able to do that without appearing to be belonging, or at least if not belonging, without appearing to be sympathetic to a particular camp?
You know, that is impossible.
Because people will think she's with the other crowd.
That is impossible within the ANC, not to appear as if you are with another camp. And even the mere silence, the way in which this issue has taken the life of its own, even silence itself can always be interpreted as siding with the other group and the other camp. And I think it goes even outside the party. If you talk to people, you listen to people, there is always two extremes on this issue. The current leadership of the Youth League must be fired. That's it. We should be done away with them. And the others are saying that they should be retained. They should not be even some element of a sanction to them. The difficulty, I think, that we have experienced in this thing is being able to strike a perspective in the middle there. It's very difficult. I don't know if the NDC of Appeal under Ramaphosa will be able to strike that. We will see how their verdict reads, and we'll see whether we can say that they've been able to stand in the middle, giving a sanction, but at the same time saying that this is happening within the party. We need to find a way to deal with that. The divide between the two camps, not just within the ANC, even outside. I mean, you read what we're getting there. Citizens, they are very agitated about this. It's a very tense moment, I think. But you don't usually get the middle ground. You always get the view that let's get rid of these people. And you also get the view that let's leave these people the way they are. They're doing a great. And I ask myself that if we get rid of them totally, or if this system, the disciplinary process managed to get rid of them, what then happens to that space? Is it going to close the space of open debate, which might have been filled by the wrong people, as we will have eliminated them? I think we need to start thinking along those paradigms.
Prof, has she been able to do that?
I think the other point that one would like to really share here is that this process Indeed, it's important. That's why we are here. That's why journalists are at Lutuli House in Soweto, at Winnie's house, and so on. And the world is watching. But it is very diversionary in many ways. It diverts our attention from focusing on important challenges that the society is facing. We are focusing on this individual and what will happen to him and so on. And we are not discussing any strategies towards issues of creating meaningful employment on a sustainable basis. We are not discussing issues about how to improve our education system so that we look at when children go to school and by the time they leave high school and so on, they are people who have both academic knowledge and practical knowledge that they can apply elsewhere. I don't see why in schools you cannot teach students things that they are going to do, which is within the curriculum, but also skills, carpentry, things like, some of them becoming plumbers, some of them becoming drivers, some of them, skills which, they need, apart from just qualification, which is so narrowly based and so on. We need to restructure all of that, but also to get quality teaching and learning. There are so many things we should be discussing. For example, we should discuss what is the meaning, for example, of the message South Africa got from Addis Ababa.
When we wanted to put Nkosazana Dlamini.
Yeah, what lesson? We need to be discussing those so that we see how can we correct that. South Africa is so important in providing leadership, being part of the leaders on where Africa is going. And we have to look at even the budgets. Are our budgets towards development of the Africa agenda going up? Is it stagnant? Is it, going down? And these are the kind of things. And how do we approach rebuilding bridges on the continent so that Africa goes forward? South Africa cannot succeed alone.
Professor Guto, things we should be talking about, things we should be discussing and working towards as a nation to build our country. We are going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back right after this.
In Fokus Sondag aand, pogings word verskerp om die land se renosters van uitwissing te red, terwyl stroopers onverpoos voortgaan met hul moorddadige soeke na geld. Wat is die oplossing? And a desperate plea by the forgotten children of Vingerkraal, scarred for life with little hope for the future. Fokus, kyk so wat saak maak, Sondag aand 6:30, net op SABC 2.
Next on 90 Plain Street.
I know things about him and the president. There is no way they'd stab me in the back.
The party needs me in the Western Cape.
I think you should just stop seeing him.
You were our most promising journal. What's going on with you?
You're dealing with wolves.
90 Plain Street, Tuesdays at 9:30 on 2.
My colleagues like to have a good time, ne? That's why they join political parties. Let me invite them somewhere on the 9th of February, 6:30 at Parliament. Nizomema. Yeah.
Don't miss the State of the Nation address, Thursday, 9th of February at 6:30 p.m., exclusive to SABC2.
Every bride thinks she's tying the knot in style.
There's no room for error in my wedding.
But opinions differ on what makes a dream day.
It was tacky. It was tasteless.
The most disgusting thing I've ever seen.
At stake is a fabulous 5-star honeymoon. Which of these brides will see her groom step out of the prize winner's limo? Find out after 4 weddings.
I'm shaking.
4 Weddings, Saturdays on SABC2.
Well, look, in every character that one does as an actor, you always bring something of yourself.
There's always been a stereotype about Zulu men.
I'm an opera singer. They will call me Budget, but I don't play the part of Budget. I play the part of Pelani.
That's the only thing we share, me and Budget.
I always say to the guys, hey, you know that guy that's called Biza? Hey, I don't want to meet him.
It opened an interesting door for me because there was a lot of comic potential.
That's how they are. They are really genuine people.
I would say he's a man who is in touch with his emotions. That's why they call me Softie.
Plat op die aarde, like you'd say in Afrikaans.
So I just kept on going on and on and on until I came across this character.
And that's actually what makes Stokvel.
Everything as a whole is memorable. Stokvel itself, the name, it's memorable.
Let's toast 10 years, Stokvel.
Cheers.
Farewell to Stokvel.
Welcome back. You are watching a live broadcast of the outcome of Julius Malema and his executive's appeal to the verdict that was handed down by the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC back in November. Now, let's quickly go back and hear what Julius Malema had to say after he was found guilty by the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee back in November.
The gloves are off. Let us confront them because their intention is very clear. They want to destroy the ANC Youth League.
Is this Malema's swan song? What would South African politics be without Malema?
I've been found guilty and I'm suspended for 5 years. A decision that I'm going to appeal. So, comrades, we must respect those internal processes and will engage those internal processes.
Judging from what
will engage those internal processes. I suppose that's exactly what they're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, I think the waiting is quite long, and I don't know why there exists a need to manage this thing, you know. Give this thing to the people and deal with it after that. You know, I'm wondering, like, why, what are the implications? I'm starting to think about a potential backlash out of this, that, you know, they're taking such a long time to give us this. It's dragging too long for you, and I think we need to hear what's going on.
It is dragging too long, and people are getting very impatient, certainly from some of the postings I'm getting on my page and the messages. People are like, they've been waiting for too long. It's going for, what, 2 hours now? Prof?
I think the waiting in itself raises issues. If already there were decisions which were made, which are coming to be presented, was there a problem there?
Okay. Well, Prof, we are seeing, of course, the Appeals Committee of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC that just walked in. Cyril Ramaphosa, the chairperson of that Appeals Committee, has just sat down, and next to him is, of course, is Jeff Khadebe, who is the head of policy in the ANC. There's several other members. Trevor Manuel is also there. He's a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Bridget Mabandla is also there. So it looks like the waiting is over. Well, almost. Let's go back to Tommy very briefly. Tommy?
Well, thank you very much for you. The wait is over now. As you can see on your screen there, Keith Kolza is on the podium now to address the media, to tell them as to how is this going to unfold. Let's listen.
So we'll introduce his team, and then he will deal with the matter at hand. Over to you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here, and I'd also like to thank you for your patience. We want to apologize most profusely for keeping you waiting. We got caught up with a few logistical challenges that related to tying up everything, all the loose ends in our work. But we also had to report to the Secretary General of the African National Congress, who is almost 40 kilometers away from here. So in the end, we had to dispatch our finding to him. So we really apologize. We hope you find it in your heart to forgive us. We've been involved in a fairly long process as the NDCA, the National Committee, Disciplinary Committee of Appeal, in determining the appeal that was made to the NDCA by the members of the Youth League, who were charged initially by the national officials and who appeared before the National Disciplinary Committee. The National Disciplinary Committee have been finalized its work. They sought to appeal to us, and we do need to say that this announcement that we're making before you today is being made pursuant to the ANC's constitution, a constitution that requires that a public announcement regarding the outcome of the disciplinary proceeding be made. The detailed finding of the NDCA will be in a separate document. Later on, you will get a public announcement which runs into some 14 pages, but the detailed finding runs into several more pages. The purpose of this media announcement is to announce to both the public and indeed to the membership of our organization the outcome of the appeal process involving Comrades Julius Malema, Ronald Lamula, Pule Mabe, Sindiso Magata, Kinetsi Musonegi, and Floyd Shibambo. The NDCA wishes to record at the outset that this ANC is a voluntary organization, and it is also the oldest liberation movement on the African continent. The relationship between the ANC and its members has helped to shape the character of the ANC to ensure, amongst other things, that the ANC shall, in its composition and functioning, be non-democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and against any form of racial, tribalistic, or ethnic exclusivism or chauvinism, and the prejudices within the context of respecting the linguistic, cultural, and religious diversity of its members. The ANC believes that one should also not lose sight of the fact that discipline is one of the key pillars in the life of the ANC. It is an important pillar that has been solidified over many, many years and decades. The NDCA believes that one should also not lose sight of the fact that with regard to discipline, the process of discipline is governed by the constitution of the ANC. The NDCA as a committee, as a subcommittee of the ANC, National Executive Committee, is firmly determined to ensure that there should be good discipline in the organization. And it is against this background that the ANC manages the relationship with its members and discipline within the organization. Where there is deemed violation of discipline in the ANC, the Constitution sets the rules of discipline, the procedures thereof. It states also that the objective of disciplinary procedure is to ensure that in all disciplinary proceedings that the ANC engages in, there is a formal procedure that is set out in the Constitution. There is also a just and fair procedure. A member is presumed innocent until proven guilty. A member has a chance to defend herself or himself, and a member has a chance to also appeal, and indeed a right to appeal. Comrades Julius Malema, Ronald Lamola, Pule Mabe, Sindiso Makaka, Kineti Musenehi, and Freud Shibambu appealed to the NDCA against the conviction and sanction imposed by the NDC on the 10th November 2011, in terms of which the comrades were found guilty for contravening various acts of misconduct in terms of Rule 25.5 of our Constitution, and they were sanctioned by the NDC. The appeal hearings of these comrades were convened in the context of an ANC process, the rules of which are governed by the ANC Constitution as amended by the Polokwane Conference of 2007. The frame of reference for evaluating the grounds for appeal is against the criteria that is set out in the ANC Constitution, particularly Rule 2, which sets out the aims and objectives. Amongst others, the aims and objectives of the ANC are to unite all the people of South Africa, Africans in particular, for the complete liberation of the country from all forms of discrimination and national oppression, to end apartheid in all its forms and transform South Africa as rapidly as possible into a united, non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic country based on the principles of the Freedom Charter and in pursuit of the national democratic revolution. It is also to unite all the people of our country for the liberation from all forms of discrimination and national oppression, and to end apartheid and to defend the democratic gains of our revolution. This process is also being done against the backdrop of what the character of the ANC is. And that is clearly set out in our Constitution. The ANC is a non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic liberation movement. Its policies are determined by the membership and its leadership, and the leadership is accountable to the membership in terms of the procedures laid down in the Constitution. The principles of freedom of speech and free circulation of ideas and information will operate within the ANC. The ANC will support the emancipation of women. The principles of freedom of speech and free circulation of ideas and information will continue to be the key principles that guide us. When it comes to membership, our Constitution sets out a clear provision of what membership of the ANC is all about. It provides that on being accepted in the ANC as a new member, that person shall, in a language that he or she knows well, make the following solemn declaration to the body or persons designated to administer such an oath. It says, I, Cyril Ramaphosa, solemnly declare that I will abide by the aims and objectives of the African National Congress as set out in the Constitution, the Freedom Charter, and duly adopted policy positions, that I am joining the organization voluntarily and without any motives of material advantage or personal gain, that I agree to respect the Constitution and the structures and to work as a loyal member of the organization, that I will place my energies and skills at the disposal of the organization and carry out tasks given to me, that I will work towards making the ANC an even more effective organization and an instrument of liberation in the hands of our people, and that I will defend the unity and integrity of the organization and its principles and combat any tendency towards disruption and factionalism. Rule 5 sets out the duties of the members. It is to take a full and active part in the discussion, formulation, and implementation of the policy of the ANC, to take all steps to understand and carry out the aims and policy and the programs of the ANC, to observe discipline, behave honestly, and carry out loyally decisions of the majority and decisions of higher bodies of the organization. It is also to combat propaganda detrimental to the interests of the ANC and to defend the policy, aims, and programs of the ANC. It is also to explain the aims, policy, and programs of the ANC to the people of South Africa and to deepen one's understanding as a member of the social, cultural, political, and economic problems of our country. This is the backdrop against which the NDCA handles disciplinary processes in the ANC. It takes all these issues into account as it dispenses discipline and as it ensures that the ANC lives up to the ethos that are set out in our Constitution. With regard to this case, the appellants filed their notices of appeal on the 24th of November 2011. The appellants filed their heads of argument on the 16th of January 2012, and the respondent filed its head of arguments on 20th January 2012. Initially, this hearing was set down for the 4th of January 2012, and the parties had to file their heads of argument 7 days before the hearing. At the request of the appellant's representatives, an extension of time was granted and the appeal was heard on the 23rd and the 24th of January. A total of 69 arguments were raised by the appellants in the 4 appeal hearings. These arguments comprised of cross-cutting legal and procedural issues which involved all the appellants and specific arguments on the merits of individual cases. In determining the appeals, the NDCA had regard to the record of the NDC hearing, which ran into 1,300 pages, together with a number of other documents that were annexed, including the Youth League's constitution and including a number of other documents that govern the Youth League. We also had benefit of the notice of appeal. We also had benefit of the NDC's findings and various annexures and the heads of argument which were set out by the appellant together with the respondent. So we had a mountain of documents that we needed to plow through and apply our minds to as carefully as possible. The parties agreed at the hearing that the findings in the 4 appeals could be consolidated, which is what we have done. Now I come to the summary of appellants' cross-cutting legal and procedural arguments. The appellants had raised a number of issues from a procedural point of view, where they argued that there were a number of irregularities with regard to how the hearing was held at the NDC level. And we had to go through the various points and issues and challenges indeed that they had raised. Firstly, the appellants argued that the NDC members should have recused themselves, and they identified 3 members of the NDC, they being Derek Hanekom, the chairperson of the NDC, Susan Shabangu, and Collins Chabani. They wanted Derek Hanekom to recuse himself because he conducted an interview with the media before the commencement of the proceedings. They also argued that he changed the venue of the proceedings unilaterally. They said that his inflexible position on the policy of expropriation of land without compensation was also a reason why he should recuse himself. With regard to Comrade Susan Shabangu, they argued that Comrade Susan Shabangu had made utterances or statements on nationalization, which seemed to indicate that she would be biased in the hearing against them. Comrade Collins Chabani, they argued that his relationship with Julius Malema was not a good relationship. And they also said that his employment in the president's office made him biased, more so because, as they argued, the president was one of the officials, the national officials, who had preferred charges against them. The NDC in its ruling stated, amongst others, that the onus of establishing a case for recusal is upon the applicant, and the test for that has to be an objective test. The ANC, they said, is a vibrant political movement which encourages constructive debate, and it is not unexpected for ANC members to hold different views. However, this does not automatically translate into bias or a perception of bias. Such a conclusion is unreasonable. In the view of the NDCA, the appellants argument that individual members such as Derek Hanekom, Susan Shabangu could exert pressure to bear on the National Executive Committee and indeed on the ANC as a whole to decide the issues of nationalization and expropriation of land in a particular way, and that the exclusion of the appellants from the organization would facilitate this outcome is both naive and absurd. With regard to Collins Chabani, it is ridiculous to argue that his deployment in the president's office in government could have made him biased. What the appellants are really saying in this regard is to argue that the NDCA itself should deduce that there is some conspiracy within the ANC In all the circumstances, the NDC is satisfied that the NDC applied its mind properly to the appellant's application for the recusal of the 3 of its members and finds that there is no basis whatsoever or reason to vary the decision that was taken by the NDC. The appellants also argued on a procedural matter as well that NDC members who missed the hearing participated in the adjudication of the final matter. The applicants argued that the NDC erred in allowing members of the panel who had missed crucial hearings of the NDC, as it had all these cases, to participate in the final adjudication of the facts of the matter. Alternatively, in the adjudication of the substantive matter without having had the benefit of the evidence and without any qualification. They argued that their participation rendered the process unfair and vitiated the entire proceedings, and they therefore prayed that the NDCA should rule that the proceedings should be null and void. The NDCA examined the attendance register, which was part of the record, and satisfied itself that the hearings were procedurally fair and were conducted in accordance with the provisions of the ANC Constitution, and that only those members who were present throughout the respective proceedings participated in the decision-making process relating to the particular disciplinary hearing. Consequently, the appellant's argument is dismissed. Coming to the third issue that the appellants raised with regard to that the NDCA was biased. The appellants argued that the NDC, particularly the presiding officer, was biased in that the behavior of the presiding officer, particularly in announcing the charges to the press, showed that he had an interest in a particular conclusion of this matter and was biased. The NDC was in contact with the Secretary General of the ANC to discuss the issuing of statements. Alternatively, the NDC issued statements without reference to the SG. They also argued that Comrade Jackson Mthembu facilitated the press conference, that the fact that he facilitated the press conference was sufficient proof to show that there is collusion between the NDC and the ANC. In other words, and the complainant were the national officials. They also argued that the presiding officer was in a rush and he was impatient and he wanted the hearing to be concluded as quickly as possible. The NDC, they argue, allowed the Secretary General to take decisions about the change of venue to suit his own political goals. The appellant's argument that members of the NDC should, during the performance of their duties, have no contact with other members of the ANC is absurd. The ANC is a vibrant voluntary organization whose members are required to undertake certain tasks on behalf of the organization, and the ANC, in making appointments, has full confidence in the integrity of its appointees. In the view of the NDCA, therefore, the appellant's argument that the NDC was in contact with the Secretary General to discuss statements is without foundation and without substance. As stated, the NDC relies on the ANC for logistical support. As this is an NDCA press conference, it is being held in a building that is essentially and effectively controlled by the Secretary General, who's the Chief Administrative Officer of the ANC. So one can never therefore argue that there should be no contact. We've concluded that the NDC is blameless in this regard, and what they've put forward is unsupported. We have found no evidence that supports the view that the presiding officer was also in a great deal of hurry. Consequently, the appellant's argument is dismissed. It's hot in here. The appellants argued that the charges that were preferred against them were instituted to settle political scores. They argued that the charges were aimed at settling certain political scores. The grounds they advanced are that the President and the Secretary General of the ANC have political scores to settle with them, and that is why they brought these charges. The appellants state that it is well established that the ANC Youth League adopted a resolution effectively to remove the Secretary General at the next conference. The League's Congress also refused to adopt a resolution supporting the retention of the President of the ANC. On an objective analysis and in the light of the above reasoning, the NDCA is satisfied that the NDC discharged its duty under Rule 25(2) of the ANC Constitution and finds no reason to depart from the approach adopted by the NDC in distinguishing between legitimate charges and charges that can be brought with a political motive. Consequently, the appellant has failed to convince the NDCA that the charges were instituted to settle political scores. Appellants also argued that the NDC ruling offends against the autonomy of the ANC Youth League. They argued that the ANC Youth League is a separate legal entity from the ANC, that any disciplinary action the appellant should have been conducted by the Youth League, and that since the definition of autonomy was vague in the ANC Constitution, the NEC and not the NDC should be the final arbiter of the meaning of autonomy. Although the Youth League has an organizational and administrative life of its own constitution, and the power to hold its own conferences and to take decisions, the appellants correctly conceded, though, that in the event of a conflict between the constitutions of the Youth League and the constitution of the ANC constitution will prevail and take precedence. This they conceded. In the view of the NDCA, this will always be so because the Youth League is essentially an integral part of the ANC, and it operates within the framework of the ANC Constitution as well as the policies of the ANC. If the intention of the ANC was to define its relationship with the Youth League to encompass the political and historical background of the autonomy of the Youth League, then, in the view of the NDCA, the definition of autonomous in the ANC Constitution would have been drafted differently. However, the present definition of autonomous in the ANC Constitution places the onus on the Youth League to operate within the framework of the Constitution and the policies of the ANC. Consequently, the appellant's argument that the Youth League could make and publicly communicate its policy even if it transgresses ANC policy is absurd in the extreme. For the reasons set out by the NDC in its finding and the above reasons that are set out by the NDCA, the appellant's argument that the NDC ruling offends against the autonomy of the ANC Youth League must fail. The appellants also argued that the NDC ruling violates the principle of organizational discipline with reference to Rule 5.2g of the ANC Constitution. The appellants argued that the principles of organizational discipline and democracy, which are contained in the ANC Constitution, made it obligatory for the appellants to issue statements in the course and scope of their elected position, and because it reflected the majority views of the NEC of the ANC Youth League. In the view of the NDCA, Rule 5.2 of the ANC Constitution sets out the normal duties which ANC members must have to perform to achieve the objectives of the organization. These duties are not only positive, but also negative. In the view of the NDCA, the appellant's argument would be a draconian interpretation and certainly not one contemplated in Rule 5.2 of the ANC Constitution or expected of ANC members, because it would be equating a normal duty of an ANC member to a point of compulsion or automatism. In the view of the NDCA, the duty on ANC members implied by the principle of organizational discipline as set out in Rule 5.2g is the duty to carry out lawful and reasonable instructions of the ANC in the furtherance of the objectives of the ANC. This is the underpinning of Rule 5.2 of the ANC Constitution. Consequently, the appellant's argument that the NDC ruling violates the principles of organizational discipline with reference to Rule 5.2g of the ANC Constitution must fail. With regard to the findings in the individual appeals, now dealing with the merits of each of the cases, the appeal by Malema and 4 others on the so-called barging charge, where they were charged with barging into the meeting where the national officials were meeting. The applicants were charged with contravening Rule 25.5Q in that they deliberately disrupted a meeting of the national officials, thus interfering with the orderly functioning of the organization, and Rule 25.5O in that they prejudiced the integrity or repute of the organization, its personnel, or its organizational capacity by impeding the activities of the organization, creating divisions within its ranks and membership. The appellants have appealed to the NDCA against the conviction and sanction the NDC handed down on the 10th November 2011, in which the appellants were found guilty of contravening Rules 25.5G and 25.5O of the ANC Constitution. The NDCA, on its part, has given considerable and careful consideration to this matter and analyzed the events as related by the parties. And has concluded that the actions of the appellants could not be described as deliberate disruption or barging as described by the respondent. Accordingly, the appeal succeeds. The appellants are found not guilty of this charge, and the conviction and the sanction on the barging charge is set aside. Coming to the appeal by Cindy Somakaka, the appellant has appealed to the NDCA against the conviction and sentence and sanction of the NDC handed down on the 10th November 2011, in which the applicant was found guilty of contravening Rule 25.5.0 of the ANC Constitution, in that he prejudiced the integrity or repute of the organization and its personnel, in that he issued a derogatory statement against a member of the NEC and an ANC cabinet minister. The appellant's membership was suspended for 18 months. The imposition of the sanction was conditionally suspended for 3 years, and the sanction was made applicable to the appellant's membership of the ANC Youth League. The NDC has ordered the applicant to make a public apology to Comrade Malusi Gigaba within 5 days, failing which the suspended sanction of 18 months would take immediate effect. In the view of the NDCA, the evaluation by the NDC, coupled with the fact that the appellant issued statements in the name of the ANC Youth League, and that he was involved in the preparation of the statement itself, and he was party to the decision to issue the statement, also placed an evidentiary burden on the appellant to discharge. In the circumstances, the appellant's failure to testify at the hearing at the NDC level not only meant there was no version by the appellant himself before the NDC, but also that an adverse inference can be drawn on his failure to testify against him. Consequently, the NDCA confirms the finding of the NDC and finds no basis or reason to vary the NDC's decision that the appellant issued the statement and that he was personally liable. The appellant's appeal is accordingly dismissed. The appeal of Floyd Shibambo. The appellant has appealed to the NDCA against the conviction and sanction of the NDC handed down on the 10th November 2011, in which the appellant was found guilty on 2 counts of contravening Rule 25.5.0, AA, BB, and CC of the ANC Constitution, in that he swore at a journalist, thereby bringing the organization into disrepute, and for issuing a statement which was in contravention of the ANC policy, and he issued a press statement on Botswana which was also in contravention of ANC policy. The appellant's membership was suspended for 3 years, and pursuant to Article 11.2 of Schedule A of the Constitution of the Youth League, the NDC ordered the appellant to vacate his position as a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League. The NDCA, for itself, has analyzed the evidence given by the appellant and the various other witnesses, including appellant's heads of argument, and it is clear to the NDCA that the appellant issued the statement and therefore was personally liable for the statement that he issued, that was issued in his capacity as the spokesperson of the ANC Youth League. The NDCA finds no reason or basis to vary the decision of the NDC, and the appellant's arguments are dismissed, and the NDCA confirms the finding of the NDC that the appellant was guilty as charged. Consequently, the appellant's appeal is dismissed. Coming now to the appeal by Julius Malema on his own with regard to charge 1. The appellant was charged with contravening Rule 25.5I of the ANC Constitution by behaving in such a way as to provoke serious division or breakdown of unity in the organization, in that he addressed a press conference on 31st July 2011 at the conclusion of the ANC Youth League NEC meeting, where he said, amongst other things, in the past, we know President Mbeki used the agenda very well. The African agenda is no longer a priority, and we think that there is a temptation by the colonizer and the imperialist to want to recolonize Africa in a different but sophisticated way, and President Mbeki stood directly opposed to that type of conduct. The NDC found that through these utterances, the appellant sought to portray the ANC government and its leadership under President Zuma in a negative light, which therefore had the potential to sow division and disunity in the ANC. After hearing the arguments of both parties at the NDCA hearing, the NDCA is satisfied with the reasoning of the NDC and finds no basis to vary the finding of the NDC. The appellant appeal is therefore dismissed. The appellant was charged with contravening Rule 25.5C of the Constitution of the ANC by behaving in such a manner as to bring the organization into disrepute, in that he addressed a press conference on 31st July by making announcement, amongst others, that the Botswana leadership of government poses a serious threat to Africa. So we need a progressive government in Botswana. We are not going to sit with neighbors that conduct themselves like that. Botswana is in full cooperation with imperialists, and the government is undermining the African agenda. The ANC Youth League would establish a Botswana command team which would work towards uniting all opposition forces in Botswana to oppose the puppet regime of Botswana led by the Botswana Democratic Party. The NDCA, having examined the records, heads of argument, and the findings of the NDC where this issue was canvassed and dealt with exhaustively, we are satisfied that the NDC's finding and that on applicant's own evidence, he was not acting in a representative capacity. Consequently, the NDCA finds no reason or basis to vary the findings of the NDC. The appellant's appeal is therefore dismissed, and the guilty finding of the NDC is confirmed. I need to return to another issue on the procedural aspects which I need to address, which deals with the quashing of charges. Coming to the issues that the appellants raised, I missed this one, with regard to the procedure and that there were irregularities. The appellants argued that the charges that had been brought against them should be quashed. The appellant stated that the NDC committed a gross irregularity in dismissing their application for the quashing of the charges. In dismissing the application to quash the charges, the NDC set out with sufficient particularity the test to be applied in an application to quash charges and provide full reason for its decision. The NDCA sees no reason to vary the NDC's decision. It's well argued. The various issues that were canvassed are covered in our full finding document. Consequently, the appellant's argument in this regard is dismissed. The other issue that they had raised in relation to the procedure is that the national officials of the ANC are not a body and did not have the power to institute disciplinary proceedings. The appellants sharply raised the issue of the locus standi of the national officials, as well as the jurisdiction of the NDC, arguing that the national officials as a body are not capable of bringing charges against them. And in terms of the Constitution, they argued they are not empowered to do so. The NDCA has examined this argument carefully, and we are of the view that the appellant's argument is based on a misreading of a provision in our Constitution, particularly Rule 25.3 of the ANC Constitution. It is the considered view of the NDCA that Rule 25.3 empowers the national officials to invoke, to institute, and to refer disciplinary proceedings after it is satisfied that disciplinary proceedings are warranted against a member of the ANC. They have that right. Rule 25, read together with the appendix of the Constitution, empowers the national officials to institute disciplinary proceedings. The appellant's argument that the national officials is not a body cannot be sustained, and it is therefore dismissed. Those were the 2 points that I had missed with regard to the procedural aspect. We now come to the issue that the appellants raised on procedural issues as well, which is the case of mitigation. The appellants argued that the NDC committed a gross irregularity in that it failed and or refused to hear mitigating evidence from the appellants. The appellants made the following 2 submissions in support of their arguments, amongst others, that the failure of the NDC to hear mitigating evidence before deciding on and passing a sanction constituted a gross irregularity resulting in a fundamental failure of justice and fairness. That the appellant representatives were under the impression that the parties had agreed that the disciplinary hearings would be conducted in 2 stages, the substantive issues relating to conviction and, if necessary, mitigation prior to the imposition of sanction. The respondent argued that neither the ANC Constitution nor the disciplinary procedure requires the NDC to follow a 2-stage process and conduct separate hearings on guilt and thereafter on the question of an appropriate sanction. And that if the appellants had concerns about the legitimacy of the NDC, it would make no sense to refer the matter back to the NDC. The NDCA should hear any evidence which the appellants sought to lead in mitigation. The respondents, which is the ANC, also argued that if the NDCA was going to refer the matter back to the NDC for purposes of mitigation, it sought a similar opportunity as the ANC to lead evidence in aggravation of sentence. In other words, they would also want an opportunity to address the NDC to show that there are aggravating circumstances which the NDC would need to take into account before passing sentence. In relation to the appellant's second submission, the NDCA is of the view that the informal discussions that seemed to have taken place, including some written communication, albeit inconclusive, may have created an expectation in the minds of the appellants and their representatives that the proceedings before the NDC would be conducted in two stages. The first dealing with the merits of the cases, and the second dealing with the issue of sanction. I should add that the appellants had also raised in their argument and another issue, that in their own constitution they have a provision that before sanction is passed on disciplinary matter, a member is afforded an opportunity to mitigate before sentence is passed or sanction is passed. They also raised this issue as a practice that they have seen evolving in other cases in the ANC. Based on this expectation, it is possible that the appellants, in making their defense, did not see the need to advance evidence in mitigation in the course of the proceedings, which they otherwise should have done as contemplated in Rule 25(7)A of the ANC Constitution. Given the sui generis nature of the ANC disciplinary proceedings, the NDCA is of the view that the rules are sufficiently flexible and in appropriate and exceptional circumstances, they are able to accommodate a two-stage inquiry. Although these discussions, even if concluded by the parties, would not have necessarily been binding on the NDC, the NDCA is of the view that a contextual interpretation and approach necessitated by the facts of the discussion and the subsequent expectation would be in the interests of justice and in keeping with the spirit and objectives of the ANC Constitution, which provides that there should be justice and fairness in any disciplinary hearings. The NDCA has therefore decided that the 4 disciplinary hearings be referred back to the NDC to hear evidence which the appellants may wish to present to the NDC in mitigation of sanction. In the interest of equity and fairness, the NDCA has also decided that the respondents should be afforded an opportunity to present, that is, the ANC must have the opportunity to present evidence in aggravation of sanction, if any, as requested in argument before it. We now come to a summary of all the rulings. On the so-called barging charge, as I indicated, the appellants are found not guilty. The conviction and sentence is therefore set aside. Sindiso Magaka's appeal against his conviction for contravening Rule 25(5)(0) of the ANC Constitution is dismissed, and the guilty finding by the NDC is confirmed. Appeal of Floyd Shibambo, the appellant's appeal against his conviction for contravening 25(5)(0) AA, BB, and CC of the ANC Constitution is dismissed on both counts, and the guilty finding by the ANC is confirmed. The appeal of Julius Malema, the appellant's appeal against his conviction for contravening Rule 25(5)(I) of the ANC Constitution is dismissed, and the guilty finding by the NDC is confirmed. The appellant's appeal against his conviction for contravening 25(5)(C) of the ANC is also dismissed, and the guilty finding by the ANC and the NDC is confirmed. In respect of Sindiso Makaka, Floyd Shibambu, and Julius Malema, as the appellants themselves prayed to the NDCA that the matter be referred back to the NDC to determine an appropriate sanction after hearing evidence in mitigation and aggravation of sanction that the parties may wish to present. Such hearing shall be conducted by the NDC within 14 days from date hereof, and the NDC is directed to provide appropriate guidelines to the parties for the expeditious finalization of this process. In terms of the articulation between the ANC Constitution and Article 11.2 of the ANC Youth League Constitution, any sanction imposed by the NDC resulting in the imposition of a penalty of suspension of membership or expulsion from the ANC shall be applicable to the appellant's membership of the ANC Youth League. This finding of the NDCA was adopted unanimously by all the members of the NDCA who are sitting right in front of me, who are namely Trevor Manuel, Bridget Mabandla, Jeff Hadebe, and Jesse Duarte. It was a unanimous finding, and this then concludes the work of the NDCA, or the announcement that the NDCA wanted to put forward. You will have observed that the approach that the NDCA has taken to this case has been in strict accordance with the Constitution of the ANC. We have sought to act as an impartial body that dispenses discipline and justice in the ANC. We have not sought to be drawn into media commentary or anything like that, as we regard our task and duties extremely seriously. We believe that we are an impartial body, and on matters like these, we have to weigh up evidence that is presented by the appellants, as well as by the respondents. And what we have concluded in terms of all these findings is precisely what we have put before you. What we therefore request is that the NDCA should continue to handle matters in the decorum and the integrity that all these matters require. And the NDCA has taken a decision that we will not be making press commentary on the issues that we have dealt with. We've dealt extensively with the issues in the hearing, and our ruling is as set out in the document that you will get, which will also be on our website. And we are therefore not inclined to be taking questions and answering anything, because as these matters evolve, they may finally come back to us. And as the NDCA, what we have always sought to do is not to be a player in any proceedings that has disciplinary dimensions. We want to be completely impartial, and we want to be acting in complete compliance with the Constitution of the ANC. We have already communicated this decision to the ANC Youth League. We met them briefly and handed them.
As soon as they leave, we'll distribute them. Thank you.
Well, that's how the press conference of the Appeals Committee of the ANC is coming to an end, with members of the committee led by Cyril Ramaphosa refusing to take questions after having explained quite extensively their verdicts with regards to all the issues that have been raised by the ANC Youth League and the individual members with regards to the verdict of the National Disciplinary Committee. I'm going to take it back to Vuyo and his analyst in the studio to unpack some of the issues that have come out of this, particularly with regards to the dismissals of the appeals of the ANC Youth League, as well as the confirmations of the National Disciplinary Committee. And one of the most important issues being that the mitigation issue, which was quite central to the argument of the ANC Youth League as it sought an opportunity as it made its case to the Appeals Committee. Now that issue will then be referred